Nothing changes until you open your mouth and declare it. This isn't just a saying, it's a spiritual principle. It's the ultimate tool, the hidden key, and the complete answer. So many of you are quietly suffering, mistaking it for acceptance. Many of you think being still is faith, but what you're really practicing is fear in disguise. You've been in situations full of amazing potential and stayed silent. You've stood at the edge of your own dreams with your lips sealed, and the universe has waited, not because it doubts your worth, but because it responds to your words. Let me be clear, your silence has become your agreement with delays. It's written, open your mouth wide, and I will fill it. Psalm 81:10. It doesn't say wish in your heart, think positive thoughts, or wait and see. No, it says open your mouth. That's the gateway for divine blessings. That's the trumpet that makes obstacles fall. That's the power that parts the impossible. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is still how everything new starts. You must speak, not as a ritual or a chant, but as a direct command. Spiritual law doesn't respond to hesitation, it responds to absolute certainty. See, being silent when you're afraid isn't neutral, it's agreement. When you don't speak up against a lie, you confirm it. When you don't interrupt fear, it takes over. When you say nothing, you're actually saying something, and that something is surrender. But when you speak with the authority of your true self, you shift the unseen. You rearrange what seems unchangeable. You signal to the universe that a new architect has arrived, and a new plan is happening now, not later. You're not waiting for good things. Good things are waiting for your voice. I've seen too many people believe the false idea that silence is spiritual, that being quiet is holy, or that saying nothing is safer than speaking incorrectly. But I tell you this with love and clarity. It's more dangerous to be silent out of fear than to speak with faith. You can always adjust a bold statement. You can redirect a prayer that missed the mark, but you can't harvest where you've never planted. And your words are the seeds. Your rhythm is the rain. Your faith is the field. Nothing grows without a word, and no word can grow until it's spoken. So I'm asking you now, not as a suggestion, but as a divine wake-up call. What haven't you spoken? What truth have you held back, waiting for the right time? What blessing have you delayed by not declaring it? You weren't put on earth to just observe, you were sent to create. You weren't designed to just cope, you were designed to command. And the universe won't move until your tongue does. Say this with me now, not softly, not apologetically, but with the voice of a soul who finally remembers why they were given a voice. I open my mouth, and heaven answers. I speak my good, and it appears. I no longer agree with delay through silence. You are not quiet. You are not helpless. You are not waiting. You are the voice the miracle was waiting for. And now that voice has spoken. And so it is. You might call it a waiting season or a wilderness. You might say, I'm in transition, or God must be working behind the scenes. But let me tell you what that season really was. A silent season. A time of delay, not by divine plan, but by your own hesitation. You weren't being tested. You were being quiet. You weren't lost in a mystery. You were silenced by fear, uncertainty, or false humility. And nothing moved because your mouth didn't. I remember a woman who came to me faithful, sincere, devoted in her spiritual journey. She had fasted, prayed, given, affirmed, journaled, and visualized. But her life still felt stuck. Her finances hadn't changed in years. Her relationships felt distant. Her body was tired. With all this, she asked me, what am I missing? I told her, you're doing everything except the one thing that opens the door. She blinked. What's that? She asked. I said, you haven't spoken with command. You've asked, but not declared. You've hoped, but not ruled. You've whispered, but not announced. You've treated your mouth like a suggestion box, not a throne. Understand this clearly. The spiritual world doesn't wait for perfection, but for obedience to its laws. And the law is this. Nothing truly begins until your tongue obeys your spirit. You can't manifest in silence. You can't change things by just thinking positively while still speaking fear. You can't ride the winds of destiny with your lips sealed shut. God doesn't force blessings on you. God fulfills your declarations. God manifests your spoken words. Even the very breath of creation was preceded by speech. Let there be light, and light appeared. Not before, not during, but after the command. The same goes for your healing, your prosperity, your restoration, your clarity. It doesn't arrive until it's spoken into existence. Your silent periods weren't proof you were abandoned. They were proof you hadn't remembered your voice yet. And when you do remember it, you must use it, not to impress, but to initiate, not to explain, but to command. Words aren't casual, they're causal. And silence when you have a need isn't reverence, it's holding back spiritually. So now, let's do what that woman did. We reverse the agreement. That day, she stood up, tears in her eyes but fire in her voice. And she said, I cast out every silent agreement with lack. Not, I hope lack leaves, or God, please remove it, but I cast it out. She spoke as someone who realized her voice was the gate through which all things must pass. And within days, things started to shift. Blessings that had been circling her life without landing suddenly appeared. Favor that had been delayed for no reason found its way through. Not because she became more deserving, not because the world changed, but because she did, and it started with her mouth. So speak this now, not because I told you to, but because this moment demands it. I cast out every silent agreement with lack. I cancel every unspoken contract with delay. I no longer worship at the altar of silence. I speak, and life obeys. The silent season is over. My voice has returned, and the law is listening. And so it is. Everything you see around you, building, every system, every invention, every structure started not with action, but with a word. Before the brick, there was a blueprint. Before the physical form, there was a phrase. Before any manifestation touched the earth, a sentence was spoken into the unseen, and the unseen responded by becoming real. This isn't just philosophy or poetry. It's fundamental law, written in sacred texts so clearly no one can misunderstand it. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Hebrews 11:3. Let that truth sink deep into your spirit. What's seen comes from what's spoken. You keep asking why nothing is moving, why you feel stuck, why you give, pray, and believe, but still feel like you're waiting for something to change. Let me give you the spiritual diagnosis. You are begging for what you were designed to build, and you're building nothing because you haven't spoken. You're standing on a construction site, holding blueprints of your desires in your heart, but refusing to speak the command that tells the workers, both angelic and metaphysical, to start. You say, I'm waiting on God. But in truth, God is waiting on you. God is waiting for your words to match your vision, waiting for your declaration to grant permission, waiting for your command to activate the forces that create form. Nothing in divine law moves by emotion alone. Heaven isn't moved by pain, it's moved by spoken authority. You weren't given a tongue to describe your problems, you were given a tongue to build your reality. I tell you this now with love, but without compromise. Stop begging. Stop pleading for scraps when you've been given the creative power to form abundance. Stop looking up and asking why not me, and start looking within and declaring, it is mine now. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. This isn't entitlement, it's spiritual obedience. The law of created reality doesn't reward good intentions. It rewards spoken initiation. Imagine this: a city lies empty, ready for construction. You stand at its edge, blueprint in hand, heart full of purpose. You cry out for change. You hope for beauty, but the builders can't start. They're skilled, they're ready, but they wait on one thing: the command, and the command must come through your words. Speak it, and they begin. Delay it, and nothing rises. So speak this with me now, not with hesitation, but with certainty. I now build my world with my words. Again, like you're placing stone upon stone in the unseen, I now build my world with my words. I no longer beg, I create. What I speak appears. The world isn't indifferent. The world isn't asleep. The world is waiting. Waiting for you to remember who you are. Waiting for you to open your mouth and command the blueprint into reality. Waiting for your voice to echo the word that created the cosmos, so that your own corner of creation can rise in glory. And now you have spoken. And so it is. Everything you see, this room, this planet, this very breath, was once formless, silent, waiting. Everything in your world began in the unseen, not because of effort or striving, but because of a spoken word. From mountains to markets, from stars above to the ground beneath your feet, the visible was brought forth by an invisible voice. The word always comes first. It leads, it designs, it declares what must be, and then what must be starts to move. There's no physical form without a voice, and no voice without faith. The divine pattern hasn't changed since Genesis. Let there be, and there was, and the apostle confirmed it in Hebrews 11:3. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. So I ask you, what are your words creating? What blueprint are your words drawing? What structure are your sentences shaping? Because whether you realize it or not, your mouth is still a builder. It builds delay, or it builds destiny. It builds confinement, or it builds breakthroughs. The law of created reality is never paused. It's always working, either with you or against your silence. You say, I've been waiting so long. But dear one, you haven't been waiting. You've been holding back. You've been afraid to speak your prosperity, afraid to declare your healing, afraid to affirm love before it's proven itself. You've used your voice to report what is, not to release what shall be. But heaven doesn't move on reports, it moves on command. Angels, elements, and the energies of provision and protection don't respond to begging. They respond to boldness. You say, I've asked God, but have you told your world? Have you opened your mouth and said, this is my time, this is my abundance, this is my restoration, this is my divine compensation, and I will have it now. Because until you do, nothing changes. Why? Because nothing has been framed, nothing has been formed, nothing has been commanded. You don't build with worry. You don't build with thoughts alone. You build with words. You frame the unseen with your voice, and its substance must obey. But if your voice stays idle, your promise remains invisible. The building materials for your next miracle are sitting in spiritual storage, untouched, not because you're unworthy, not because you're unseen, but because you haven't said, begin. So say it now, as someone who remembers, as someone who commands, as someone who builds. I no longer report, I command. I do not beg, I build. I frame my world with divine speech. And let that be the sound that moves the machinery of manifestation. Let that be the sound that breaks the cycle of waiting and starts the blueprint of your next season. Because the law of created reality isn't a mystery. It's a tool, a divine system, a cosmic yes to the one who speaks. And now the system has heard your voice, and so it is. Your tongue isn't just for show, it's for building. It's not there to just fill silence or express feelings. It's not for coping, commenting, or complaining. It's a design tool, the architect's pen, the holder of your destiny's blueprint. Your tongue draws in the unseen what will soon be built in the visible. Every phrase you utter lays a brick. Every sentence seals a foundation. Every rhythm you practice writes the code of your world. Your tongue doesn't wait for conditions to get better. It builds the conditions. Your tongue doesn't ask for permission. It starts the plan. Heaven has placed the sacred trust in your mouth. By divine law, your tongue frames your reality, your thoughts, not your intentions, but your words. Picture this. You stand before a vast, empty plot. No walls, no ceiling, no structure. But in your hand is a blueprint folded into the shape of your vocabulary. It contains rooms called healing, hallways named provision, windows marked love, doors labeled breakthrough, and in your other hand, the hammer, your spoken word. And God, the great contractor, waits not for your fear, not for your tears, but for your instructions. Speak, he says, and I will build. But many of you have stood there, blueprint in hand, hammer untouched, wondering why nothing is rising. And the answer is simple, sacred, and clear. You never spoke. Or worse, you used your hammer to destroy what you begged heaven to build. Because the tongue doesn't pause. It's always working, building beauty or chaos, freedom or bondage, grace or grief. You speak of lack, and walls of scarcity rise. You speak of delay, and ceilings come down. You say it's always hard, and suddenly the path to ease disappears. You don't realize you're holding sacred tools, that every word is a construction order stamped with spiritual authority. And some of you have used these divine tools not to build sanctuaries, but to construct prisons with your own tongue as the warden. But this ends now. Today, we put the hammer back to its holy use. We lift the tongue back to its sacred purpose. We speak not from how we feel, but from a divine mandate. We declare not based on what we see, but based on the blueprint of truth. The life you long to live, the peace, the abundance, the joy isn't found. It's built, and the construction begins in your mouth. So say this now, as someone ready to build what Spirit has already shown. My tongue holds the blueprint. My word is the hammer. I build wealth, healing, and love with what I say. and then declare this final warning, not in fear, but in reverence. I will no longer use divine tools to build disaster. Your words aren't just sentences. They are scaffolding. They are structure. They are seeds. And now, architect of divine reality, it's time to build what matches your soul. Begin. And so it is. The real problem isn't the fear you feel. It's the agreement you make with it. It's not the lack in your bank account. It's the silent approval you give it with your words. The true danger isn't in the pain or the delay or the struggle, but in the moment you agree with those things by repeating their message with your mouth. This is the law, and it never fails. Whatever you speak in agreement with, you empower. Whatever you say in harmony with, you invite in. If you say nothing is working, the universe says, as you wish. If you say, it's always been hard for me, the law says, then let it continue. If you say, I can't see how this changes, then it won't, not because the door is locked, but because your voice keeps the key hidden in fear. Let's go back to the garden, to the moment before everything went wrong. It wasn't the fruit that started the problem. It was the conversation. Eve didn't fall when she ate. She fell when she agreed. The serpent didn't force her hand. He only needed her voice. He offered something that contradicted divine truth, and she spoke back, not in refusal, but in reason. And with that exchange, the agreement shifted. Don't miss this. It was her words that opened the problem. It was her mouth, not the bite, that caused the breach. Her tongue agreed with what was false, and the false became real. And it's still true today. Fear knocks, and you answer with your words. Doubt whispers, and you make it louder with your storytelling. The opposing force doesn't need to bind you. It simply needs you to speak what binds yourself. This isn't superstition. It's spiritual technology. Agreement is access, and you've given access to things that were never intended by God because you agreed with their negative report. But today, that report is cancelled. Say this now. As someone breaking a spiritual contract you never meant to sign, I revoke every false agreement I made with despair. Again, with rhythm, finality, and sacred defiance, I revoke every false agreement I made with despair. You may have said, I'll always be broke. You may have said, it's just my anxiety. You may have said, I never get chosen. But today, you reclaim the pen. You rewrite the agreement. You reverse the contract. You declare that your tongue is no longer leased out to lies. Let the unseen realm hear you clearly. I no longer speak for fear. I no longer narrate for delay. I no longer partner with pain through my mouth. You were never meant to echo the problem. You were designed to announce the kingdom. And now your voice is clean. Now your agreement is broken. And so it is. You've stood at that door for months, maybe years. You've cried in front of it. You've fasted near it. You've journaled about it, sung over it, asked others to pray for it. You've treated the door like a test or a punishment, as if your stillness might earn its mercy. But let me tell you what the Spirit told me, and I won't sugarcoat it. The door isn't locked. It's voice activated. It doesn't open to desperation. It doesn't open to silence. It doesn't open to the overly humble or the endlessly patient. It opens when the one standing before it speaks. You see, divine doors aren't like human doors. They're not made of wood or steel. They're made of response. They are thresholds in the unseen that react to the vibration of spiritual commands. And if your mouth is silent, the threshold stays invisible. Not because it's against you, but because you haven't called it into existence. The word creates the path. The declaration unlocks what looks unmovable. You aren't waiting on the door. The door is waiting on your voice print. I once knew a man who loved God with all his heart. He was generous, faithful, kind, and deeply discouraged. His income had dried up after a business failure, and every day he said the same thing, I'll wait on the Lord. But what he called faith was really fear disguised as patience. He wasn't waiting. He was holding back his authority. I told him gently but firmly, God isn't moved by how long you endure. He's moved by how boldly you declare. I asked him, have you told your provision to appear? He was stunned. He had been talking about his lack. He had been talking about waiting, but he had never once spoken to the provision, and that's why the door hadn't moved. So I gave him the command, speak now, not about what you lack, but to what you expect. And from his spirit rose a declaration, so simple, so holy, so aligned, that the atmosphere changed instantly. He said, I declare divine supply, and supply obeys my voice. Say it with him now, not to copy his story, but to start your own. I declare divine supply, and supply obeys my voice. Do you feel that shift? That's not just emotion, that's law. The unseen has just been given instructions. Heaven's resources have been accessed. The door has heard the voice it was designed to respond to. The abundance that has been circling your life, waiting for a landing strip, has now received coordinates. So say it again, and this time know that your voice print is a spiritual signature. I declare divine supply. And supply obeys my voice. Because the reason the door hasn't opened is that you hadn't yet spoken, like it must, but now you have. And so it is. There came a moment in my life, not in the outside world, but deep within my soul, when everything changed, not because a miracle arrived, or a door flew open, or money fell from the sky, but because I stopped describing my pain. I stopped rehearsing the ache, stopped detailing the delays, stopped giving a play-by-play report of everything that wasn't working. And in that moment, I saw clearly. I hadn't been speaking for transformation. I had been speaking for sympathy. And sympathy isn't a creative force. Sympathy doesn't move spiritual law. It doesn't break cycles. It only confirms the wound. I used to tell people how hard it was. I wore my story like a badge, like proof of my endurance. I wanted others to see the depth of my struggle, the weight of what I had carried. I was addicted to describing every closed door, every betrayal, every unhealed place. But the more I told the story, the more it became fixed. And then one day, I realized something terrifying and liberating. I wasn't just living in the pain, I was speaking it into permanence. Every time I told it, I built it. Every time I described it, I made it stronger. My mouth had become the architect of my own prison. I wasn't telling the story for healing. I was telling it to be heard. But spiritual law doesn't respond to pity. It responds to command. So I let it go. I stopped describing what was wrong. I stopped sharing the old evidence. I stopped repeating the scene where I was the victim, the one left behind, the one who suffered. And in its place, I built a new pattern, a new rhythm, a new declaration. I narrate my outcome, not my condition. Say it now with me. As someone who is done feeding the past, I narrate my outcome, not my condition. This isn't denial. This is authority. I don't deny there was pain. I simply deny it the power to shape my future. I don't deny the delay. I deny it permanence. I don't deny the heartbreak, but I refuse to make it my script. The law doesn't need your pity. It needs your instructions. Angels don't move at the sound of your wounds. They move at the sound of your words. When I started speaking from where I was going instead of from where I had been, the entire landscape of my life began to rearrange. I must tell you plainly, pity is spiritual poison. It's a subtle agreement with powerlessness. It's a quiet contract with stagnation. It's the belief that telling your pain story will heal you, but it only locks you into it. It's a performance of suffering that hopes for a rescuer, while denying that the rescuer is already inside you, waiting for your voice to change. So today I ask you, are you describing your life from old wounds or from divine vision? Are you describing the prison or declaring your deliverance? What would change if you stopped telling people what hurt you and started telling the law what it must build? Speak it with me now, as someone breaking free from emotional dependence and stepping into spiritual authority. I narrate my outcome, not my condition. My mouth is no longer the echo of pain. It is now the command center of my resurrection. Because when I stopped describing my pain, I started building my promise. And so it is. There's a law written not by humans, but by spirit. No divine gift enters your life without your verbal permission. Not because God withholds good from you, but because divine order never breaks divine law. And the law is this. The word precedes the gift. The declaration opens the door. The blessing cannot walk into a room where your tongue hasn't welcomed it. Spirit is incredibly generous, but it's not intrusive. It waits at the threshold of your life, not for your need, but for your words. And until you give it permission to enter, the angels hold the package at the gates, waiting for the vibration of your voice to signal entry. I once saw it in a vision. Gifts, bright, luminous, radiant with heaven's substance, lined up outside a city gate. Each one carried a name, a purpose, a season. There was wealth. There was healing. There was reconciliation. There was creativity, marriage, restoration, legacy. But none of them could enter. Why? Not because the person was unworthy, not because it wasn't time, but because the gate of the tongue was sealed. And the law had been written from eternity. You shall declare a thing, and it shall be established. Not you shall desire a thing, not you shall wish, but declare. You don't receive by silence, you receive by speech. Your words are your spiritual permission slip. They authorize heaven's delivery, they remove blocks, they open the vault, they break any embargo. The good is already yours by spiritual inheritance. But until you speak it, it cannot become real in your visible world. This isn't just a metaphor, it's divine technology. The law doesn't bypass your voice, it activates through it. And many of you have blessings circling you: jobs, love, clarity, healing, divine compensation that can't land because you haven't said, I permit this, I accept this, I declare this. You've cried for it, you've waited, you've even fasted, but you haven't authorized it with the one instrument that turns divine potential into manifested fact, your tongue. So say it now, not timidly, but with royal clarity. As someone who holds the keys of the kingdom, I permit my good to appear now by divine authority. Again, I permit my good to appear now by divine authority. You're not begging, you're not wishing, you're opening the gate, you're lifting the latch, you're commanding the door to swing wide. And every blessing that has been waiting, every delayed promise, every withheld answer, every unseen provision, now hears its cue and begins to enter. Speak this and watch what was circling start to land. I revoke all denial. I cancel every block. I open my mouth and permit my destiny to manifest now, because heaven has always been ready. Now, finally, so are your words. And so it is. Now that you've remembered who you are and what your voice can do, let's seal this moment with power. Let's speak this new rhythm into your very being. Let's activate, not through thought or effort, but through the spoken vibration of authority. Because it's not enough to just know the truth, it must be voiced. It must be breathed into being, must leave your mouth and land upon the fabric of reality as a sacred instruction. This is your spoken permission. This is your verbal contract with heaven. And we begin not in doubt, but in power. Say this with me now. And say it with a spirit that has stopped asking for change and has started commanding it. I give my words permission to shape my world. Again, louder inside your soul than any fear ever tried to whisper. I give my words permission to shape my world. Do you feel that? That's the shift of divine law awakening under your voice. That's the machinery of manifestation hearing its instruction. That's the truth stepping onto the stage. Now, declare this, and let the lie of limitation fall off like old skin. Nothing is too far. Nothing is too late. Yes, again, nothing is too far. Nothing is too late, because spirit isn't limited by time. Your delay isn't divine, it's verbal. And now that the silence has ended, so has the delay. And one more, for the part of you that thought being stuck was a permanent sentence, let this be your new verdict. I am not stuck. I am silent no more. Say it again until the old agreement cracks. I am not stuck. I am silent no more, because you were never trapped. You were only quiet, and now your voice has returned. And so it is. There's a sacred and serious story in the beginning of Luke's Gospel. It's not often taught in its full power, but I share it now to wake you up to a truth many overlook. Zechariah was a priest, a righteous man, a devoted servant. Yet when the angel appeared and gave him the word of divine fulfillment, he questioned it. He didn't believe the message could possibly happen as spoken. And for that moment of disbelief, not rebellion, not evil, but simply a lack of belief, the angel made him unable to speak. His voice was taken away, not as punishment, but as protection. Because the law won't allow someone to speak against their own miracle once it's been declared by heaven. The word had gone out, and any word to the contrary would slow or sabotage it. So he was silenced, not forever, but until the manifestation was irreversible. His tongue was sealed until the child was born, until the prophecy was visible, until there was no room left for doubt to interfere. Do you understand the weight of this story? Your words are so powerful that even heaven must intervene if they contradict the plan. The temporary silence wasn't cruelty, it was containment. But here's the deeper warning. Many of you have silenced yourselves, not from heaven, not from angels, but from fear, from inner resistance, from spiritual amnesia. And you're not seeing your miracle, not because it's denied, but because your voice is missing. You've said, I'm just being careful, but in truth, you've been bound. You've said, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but the silence itself has become the wrong thing. The silent period exists wherever the divine word is needed and never spoken. It appears when the miracle is near, but the declaration is absent. And I've seen it over and over. A healing so close, but the mouth stays shut. A financial breakthrough ready to drop, but the person refuses to speak their abundance aloud. A relationship meant for restoration, but the tongue won't release the words of reconciliation. And so the miracle is delayed, not by God, not by timing, but by the self-imposed silence of the doubting mouth. But hear me now, there's a reversal, there's a sacred breaking of silence, there's a flame that descends and loosens the tongue, just as it did in the upper room when the Spirit came like fire and gave people the ability to speak again. That fire is still available, and that fire speaks now through you. So declare this, as someone shaking off the old silence, my tongue is set free with divine fire. Again, my tongue is set free with divine fire. Let the chains of self-censorship fall, let the cords of confusion break, let the delay end, not because the blessing was denied, but because your voice has returned. Say it until it burns through every layer of disbelief. My tongue is set free with divine fire. I speak what God has said. I echo divine law, and miracles obey. The silent period is over. The silence is broken. The word is alive. And so it is. There's a frequency in the spiritual realm that only the bold can access. It's not the language of hope, nor the murmur of pleading. It's not the desperate chant of those with weak faith. It's the voice of those who have seen with their inner vision and therefore speak with the certainty of completion. These aren't the ones who say, I hope it will happen. These aren't the ones who say, I believe it might come. These are the ones who speak as if it has already arrived, because in the eternal dimension of spirit, it already has. Faith isn't about looking forward, it's about declaring what's already done, and the mouth that creates is the mouth that speaks from the end result, not towards it. Too many people are just talking to their desired outcome, trying to talk it into reality, but the law doesn't obey an uncertain tongue. The law responds to finality, to command, to completion, to the word that says, it is done, even while your eyes still see lack. Your mouth is the midwife of the unseen. It brings forth what has no physical evidence yet, and that's why it must speak as though the evidence has already arrived, because the evidence doesn't create the word creates the evidence. This isn't delusion. This is dominion. When God created the world, He didn't say, let's hope the light comes. He didn't say, maybe the land will appear. He said, let there be, and it was. Why? Because divine speech operates in completion, not negotiation. Your command must do the same. When you speak healing, speak as someone who is already whole. When you call for provision, speak as someone who already has it. When you declare reconciliation, speak as someone who has seen the solution already prepared. This isn't fiction. This is how the law works. You aren't waiting for the blessing. You're simply aligning with the timeline where it's already done. So say it with me now, not as a request, but as a conclusion. I speak from the end, not towards it. Say it again, like your soul is catching up to your spirit. I speak from the end, not towards it, and then declare the formula that shifts everything in your life. I see what isn't seen, and I call it done. Let that phrase live in your very being. Let it be the rhythm of your rise, the soundtrack of your steps. I see what isn't seen, and I call it done, because heaven doesn't need to be convinced, it needs to be called. And when you speak as someone who has already received, the blessing rushes in, not because it finally appeared, but because you finally matched its frequency. This is the language of the fulfilled. This is how divine things become visible. And so it is. There are phrases you've repeated so many times, they've become part of your reality. Not just thoughts, but spiritual structures holding up the very circumstances you say you want to get rid of. You've said, I'm waiting on God, so often that delay feels sacred. You've said, it's always been hard, and now hard has made a home in your story. You've said nothing ever lasts, and then watched every blessing disappear. These aren't harmless expressions, they are living codes. They are spiritual contracts your soul has signed again and again. And as long as they remain, the life you desire cannot take shape. But hear me, every false script can be rewritten. Every lie you've spoken over yourself can be consumed in divine fire. This is the work now. Not soft, not sentimental, but precise, sacred, and direct. I want you to visualize it with me now. A scroll in your hand. It's old, heavy, and filled with phrases you've whispered in disappointment, mumbled in traffic, confessed in casual conversations, and cried alone at night. Maybe it's not for me. It's too late now. I never get what I want. Every sentence etched into the scroll like law. But then, light, fire not from earth but from spirit, begins to consume the scroll, not with destruction but with transformation. What was written in fear is now being rewritten in power. The tongue that once surrendered to circumstances now commands creation. The mind that once echoed trauma now sings truth. This isn't poetic, this is metaphysical editing, and it begins the moment you refuse to be loyal to your old vocabulary. I think of the woman who came to me, weeping, exhausted by life. She said, "It's always been hard for me. Ever since I was a child, struggle just follows me." I didn't deny her experience. I contradicted her agreement with it. I asked, "Why are you still telling that story? Why are you marking your future with yesterday's pain?" She paused. She was so used to being understood through her wounds that she didn't know how to speak without them. I gave her a new phrase. Simple, sacred, sharp. It was hard. "And now it isn't." She blinked. She whispered it. Then she said it louder. And by the end of the week, things that had been blocked for years began to move. Not because the facts changed, but because her words did. "Now, it's your turn. Take these false scripts and place them in the fire. Say it aloud. I burn every phrase that bound me. I revoke every word I spoke in fear. I speak a new story, one aligned with divine law, and now I rewrite it. Old, I'm waiting on God. New, I move in power. Old, it's always been hard. New, I walk in ease and favor. Old, I just hope something changes. New, I speak, and everything aligns." Don't let your future be built from negative words. Don't let your destiny be told by old wounds. This is the burning. This is the rewriting. And from the ashes of every false phrase, your true life begins. And so it is. There's a moment in every soul's life where the past must be silenced, not by forgetting, but by a spiritual command, a holy break in the story. A divine override of every old agreement that ever passed through your lips like casual wind, but landed in the soil of your life like a curse. And that moment is now. Because you have spoken lack, and lack obeyed. You have spoken waiting, and delay took its place. You have spoken small, and the world shrank to match it. But today you speak as Ezekiel did, not to report what is, but to bring to life what must be. You speak to bones. You speak to dust. You speak to what looks beyond repair. And by law, it hears you. It is written, "Prophesy over these bones and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord." Ezekiel 37:4. He didn't mourn over the bones. He didn't journal about the bones. He didn't wait for a sign. He spoke, and the bones rose. The structure reassembled. Life returned to what had been written off. This isn't history, it's a blueprint. The dry places in your life are waiting not for effort, not for emotion, but for your words. And your words must come not from memory, but from mastery. You don't repeat the old story, you erase it with your mouth. Say this with me now, not as an affirmation, but as a spoken reset. I erased the old timeline by speaking the new. Again, with spiritual certainty. I erased the old timeline by speaking the new. This is how divine law works. It doesn't erase pain with pity. It erases it by replacement. And the replacement begins in your words. You must break every inner pact you made with poverty. Not just financial poverty, but poverty of joy, of love, of clarity, of worth. These are contracts you signed with your words, often without knowing it. But now you know, and now you rewrite. Speak these now, and speak them not superficially, but from your spirit. I do not expect delay. I declare instant divine right action. I do not identify with struggle. I walk in effortless abundance. I no longer wait for prosperity. I carry it. I do not fear the future. I command it. Do you feel that? That's the old structure crumbling. That's the dry bones shaking. That's the unseen hearing. It's new instructions. You're not asking for change. You're rewriting time. You're taking down the old thought patterns and building new ones with words soaked in spirit. Speak into the barren places of your own life and say, "Hear me, lack. You no longer live here. Hear me, fear. You are no longer fed. Hear me, destiny. You have my voice again. This is your spiritual pen. This is your eraser and your engraving tool. And every timeline must now yield to the one you just spoke. And so it is. Now we seal what has been rewritten. Now we speak not as one requesting, not as one practicing, but as one ruling. This is the voice of someone who remembers that time, bows to the tongue, that the present yields to the spoken word, that your timeline doesn't dictate what you receive. Your declaration does. Every word you're about to speak isn't just floating around, it's forming. It doesn't drift into the atmosphere as wishful poetry. It cuts through layers of delay and builds structure in the unseen. These aren't just affirmations, they are divine signatures. These are the stamps of authority placed upon the moment, and the moment must now obey. Say this with me now, not as repetition, but as a command. My present obeys my voice. Again, my present obeys my voice. Let it be said until the walls of your old timeline tremble and shift. My present obeys my voice. There is no delay that can withstand that declaration. Now, this one. Say it until hope is replaced by knowing. My word isn't hoping, it's sending. Again, my word isn't hoping, it's sending. You're not casting wishes into the void. You're launching assignments into the spiritual realm. You're sending angels with instructions. You're setting creation into motion. You're not hoping for change, you're initiating it. Now, let the final seal come through the most sacred rhythm of truth. I speak, and what I say must appear. Say it like the morning light obeys it. I speak, and what I say must appear. There's no question mark in that phrase, no uncertainty, no doubt, only spiritual law responding to spiritual authority. You are no longer waiting for the world to align. You are speaking alignment into the world, and every moment from now on must match what just came out of your mouth, because your timeline is your tongue, and your voice is the architect of now. And so it is. If you only look with your eyes, you'll always feel late. You'll always feel behind, stuck, unseen, undervalued. You'll always mistake silence for abandonment and delay for denial. But dear one, hear me now. The law doesn't begin in the visible. It begins in the unseen. The movement always starts beneath the surface. The shift always starts in realms your senses can't detect. The manifestation of your healing, your prosperity, your relationships, your miracle, it begins in spirit, and spirit moves in response to your words. This isn't an opinion. This isn't just hope. This is divine order confirmed by scripture and rooted in law. Romans 4:17 declares, God calls those things which are not as though they were. That's not a poetic gesture, that's a divine strategy. The things that aren't yet visible are already real in the higher realm, and your tongue is the bridge, your voice is the connector. The spoken word is the lightning rod that draws the invisible into the realm of physical form. But the law is clear. You must call it before you see it. You must speak it while it still looks impossible. You must water the soil before you ever see a sprout. And that's where most people miss the miracle. You're standing over the ground demanding fruit, but you haven't poured water into the roots. You keep watching the leaves, but it's not the leaves that receive instructions, it's the roots. And the roots live in the unseen. That's where faith works. That's where words go first. Your words don't land on the finished product. Your words land on the essence. And when you speak with divine authority, the roots begin to awaken, the soil begins to stir. What looked like delay was just depth being established. What looked like silence was actually saturation. So hear this now and let it burn through every impatient part of your mind. The unseen moves first. If you don't see it yet, it doesn't mean it hasn't started. It means the roots are taking hold. It means the blueprint is being laid. It means the spiritual framework is building your reality in a place your natural eyes can't yet see. But you are not just natural. You are divine, and you have been given the gift of sight through declaration. When you speak, the unseen obeys. When you call something done, the unseen aligns. When you speak what you cannot yet see, you prove that you are operating by spiritual law, not by mere logic. So say this with me, not because you see it, but because you command it. I call those things which are not as though they were. Say it again, and let your roots drink. I call those things which are not as though they were. Let your timeline hear it. Let the realm of delay be broken. Let the unseen know you're no longer waiting to react. You are now creating. And declare this final truth as someone who understands the rhythm of manifestation. I water roots, not leaves. I speak where it matters, and the unseen now moves for me. It is moving. It already moved. And soon, the visible will prove it. And so it is. There's no problem more dangerous than the one you speak about carelessly. No binding force, stronger than the words you casually toss out in jest, in frustration, in passing, but that heaven still hears as a command. You think you're just venting. You think you're joking. You think you're being realistic. But the law doesn't filter tone. The law responds only to vibration, to decree, to structure. And every word you speak, no matter how lightly, is either building or breaking, freeing or restricting. You don't need an enemy when your own mouth is creating your defeat. You don't need others to sabotage you when your own voice is anchoring delay into your life. You say, nothing ever works out for me. And Spirit says, as you wish. You say, I'm always broke, and the divine ledger aligns to that frequency. You say, I'm exhausted every day, and your body obeys it. You say, this is just how it is for people like me, and the invisible gate slams shut in agreement. But you don't realize it, because you think a spell is something someone casts with candles and rituals. No, dear one, the most dangerous spells are the ones you cast with your own lips without even meaning to. Every complaint is a command. Every sarcastic declaration of failure is a seed planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious. Every phrase repeated in frustration becomes a prophecy. I must say it plainly, you unconsciously create your own problems, not because you are evil, but because you are unaware of your own divine power. Your tongue isn't neutral, it's loaded with spiritual law, and the law doesn't sleep. It records, it executes, it doesn't wait for you to mean it. It responds to the pattern, it reacts to the rhythm. If you keep saying nothing ever changes, then nothing ever will. Not because the world is against you, but because you have locked the door with your voice. But there is hope, immediate, beautiful, burning hope, because just as you created problems in ignorance, you can now bless yourself in awareness. Just as you unknowingly agreed with despair, you can now intentionally align with authority. And it begins here, with a cleansing. Not of the heart, not of the hands, but of the tongue. Say it now with reverence and responsibility. I now cleanse my tongue of every seed of despair. Again, like a soul that has just realized it's been watering weeds, I now cleanse my tongue of every seed of despair. Let the old phrases die. Let the casual self-curses be uprooted. Let the unconscious spellcasting end. You are not voiceless. You are not cursed. You are powerful beyond words. And now your words must match that power. Declare it one more time as law. I do not speak defeat, even in jest. I do not speak bondage, even in sarcasm. I speak as a creator, not a complainer. And now that you know, you can never speak the same way again. And so it is. Don't waste another moment describing the storm. Don't spend another breath reporting how violent the wind is, how loud the thunder has become, how long the waves have been crashing. You weren't called to be a weather reporter in your spiritual life. You weren't sent here to announce conditions. You were sent to command them. The greatest example ever given was not a man who avoided storms, but a man who stood up in the boat, wiped sleep from his eyes, looked directly at chaos, and spoke, "Peace, be still." That wasn't a wish. That wasn't a plea. It was a command, a verbal assertion of authority over visible disorder. He didn't talk about the storm, he talked to it. And that's where most people lose their spiritual ground. They think describing the problem is the same as dealing with it. They think naming the pain is the same as neutralizing it. They tell stories of chaos, hoping it will earn them sympathy, attention, or divine intervention. But heaven doesn't move on emotional weather reports. Heaven moves when a voice aligned with divine authority declares, "This ends now." The storm won't settle because you wish it would. It will only obey when you tell it to. You are not at the mercy of the wind. You are the one meant to quiet it. Jesus didn't say, "Let's see how bad this gets." He didn't say, "This is the worst I've ever seen." He didn't even say, "God, please help us." He commanded the atmosphere, "Peace, be still." That is the spiritual formula. That is the tone. That is the assignment. Your job isn't to get everyone on the boat to calm down. Your job is to calm the sea itself with your mouth. And now I ask you, where is your storm? What part of your life feels loud, erratic, out of control? Is it money? Is it your body? Is it a relationship, a deadline, a diagnosis? Name it, but not as a victim. Name it as a voice of divine law, and then speak into it now, not softly, but as someone who has awakened from spiritual sleep and remembered who they are. Say it now, "Peace, be still." Again, "Peace, be still. Now apply it specifically. Peace, be still in my finances. Peace, be still in my body. Peace, be still in my relationships. Peace, be still in my mind. This isn't just visualizing. This is spiritual governance. The storm isn't in charge of you. The conditions don't write your story. You are the mouthpiece of calm. You are the voice of settled seas. You are the one sent to prove that divine order still answers to human declaration. Say this final line and let the wind stop in your world. I do not describe storms. I silence them, and the weather of your world has now changed. And so it is. There's a voice beneath your voice, a whisper beneath every declaration, a subtle current of belief running under the surface of your speech. You speak affirmations with your lips, but what is your shadow voice saying in the silence that follows? You say, money flows to me, but the echo beneath it mutters, it never stays. You declare, I am chosen, yet your inner murmur says, but not for long. This is the work too few dare to face, because it's not the loud public affirmations that truly shape your world. It's the quiet, constant, internal declarations of your inner self. And whether you're aware of it or not, your shadow voice is always speaking, always planting, always creating. This voice doesn't shout, it repeats, and its power lies not in its volume, but in its frequency. You may not even hear it directly, but you feel its consequences. That sudden doubt that creeps in after a positive declaration, that emotional drop after a hopeful conversation, that tightness in your chest after dreaming aloud. Why? Because the shadow voice hasn't yet been retrained, and it doesn't care what you want. It only repeats what you have allowed it to believe. It says things like, it's too late. Nothing ever changes. I'm just not the kind of person who gets that kind of life. They always leave. It never works. And those phrases aren't harmless. They aren't just internal noise. They are unconscious decrees, and the law honors them just the same. But hear me now. That voice isn't the enemy. It's simply misinformed. It's the echo of old agreements, past pain, inherited patterns, and like any echo, it only continues if you give it space. So now we reclaim that space. We intercept the whisper and override it, not with force, but with divine rhythm, not with effort, but with command. The way to transform the shadow voice isn't to silence it, but to give it a new song, a new message, a new prophecy. And that prophecy begins with this phrase, my hidden word becomes divine outcome. Say it now to every subconscious thought that thought it could run your world. My hidden word becomes divine outcome. Again, my hidden word becomes divine outcome. This isn't magic, this is spiritual law. The inner voice must match the outer command. And when they align, manifestation becomes inevitable. There's no longer contradiction between what you say and what you believe. The old phrase, it's too late, is now rewritten as I move in divine timing. The shadow statement, it never works, is now. All things work together for my highest good. The inner doubt, I'm not the one, becomes, I am divinely selected and continually supported. This is the voice you were always meant to carry, not just on your lips, but deep within you. This is your inner voice finally transformed. This is the prophecy that plants fruit-bearing trees even in invisible soil. And this is the new reality born from the new inner voice, because now your shadow agrees with the light, and so it is. Now you speak not from theory, but from power, not from weakness, but from hard-earned wisdom. You have seen the storm. You have sat in the boat of your own waiting. You have felt the winds of fear press against you, and now you don't tremble. You speak. This isn't passive peace. This isn't gentle hoping. This is the peace that declares. This is the calm that doesn't ask permission. This is the stillness that overrides chaos by law, by vibration, by command. These words you're about to say aren't just pretty thoughts. They are tools. They are stabilizers. They are declarations that command the clouds and silence the waves. Speak them with authority. Speak them like you know the universe is listening. Say it now, and say it loud enough that your spirit hears it echo into every part of your being. My peace is not passive, it is proclaimed. Again, my peace is not passive, it is proclaimed. This isn't the peace that waits for external proof. This is the peace that creates it. Now speak to the very atmosphere around you. Let your tongue instruct the elements of your own emotional sky. The storm hears me. Once more, with clarity and command. The storm hears me. Yes, it does. It hears your spiritual posture. It hears your tone. It hears your alignment. The storm isn't in charge. You are. And now let the final words settle like oil on the waters. I declare stillness, and stillness appears. Say it again, not as a wish, but as a law. I declare stillness, and stillness appears. This is your rhythm now. This is your practice. This is your power. No longer reporting the chaos, but commanding the calm. No longer hoping for silence, but speaking it into existence. Because peace was never the absence of conflict. It was always the presence of voice. And now your voice has returned. And so it is. There's a divine pattern written into every miracle. The end is always spoken from the middle. God never waits for proof before he declares the outcome. The Most High doesn't respond to circumstances, he commands them. It is written in Isaiah 46:10. I declare the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done. This isn't poetic language. This is spiritual law. Heaven speaks of harvest when the field is still dry. Heaven announces victory when the battle still rages. Heaven proclaims the crown while the prisoner still sits in chains. And you, child of divine inheritance, are called to speak exactly the same way. But what do most people do? They speak the middle from the middle. They describe the symptoms. They analyze the drought. They echo the problems. They call it honesty. But the law calls it agreement. And what you agree with, you extend. What you talk about, you empower. And so you stay stuck. Not because there's no power, but because your tongue is aligned with the problem instead of the solution. Your tongue is partnered with the pain instead of the promise. And your words aren't waiting to confirm what is. They are meant to declare what shall be. So I ask you plainly and with holy fire, can you declare healing while symptoms still scream? Can you speak of prosperity while your bank account shows negative? Can you proclaim restoration while the phone stays silent and the door stays closed? Can you stand in the fire and say, I am not burned? Can you look at the tomb and say, He is risen? Can you sit in the lowest point and speak of reward as if you've already received it? This is the test. This is the challenge. This is the activation. Say it now, with trembling faith if you must, but say it as law. I speak the end from the middle. Again, I speak the end from the middle. Let it echo through every delay. Let it thunder into every waiting place. Let it rise like incense to God. This is the kind of speech that moves heaven. This is the voice of the prophet, not the prisoner. This is the voice of the heir, not the orphan. This is the voice that silences the problem, not because the problem disappears, but because you now outrank it. Say this with me as the final seal of your new frequency. I speak reward from the lowest point. Yes, I speak reward from the lowest point, because I don't speak as someone trapped. I speak as someone with authority, and my words don't match my surroundings. My words transform them. The middle is no longer my identity. The middle is my platform, and from here I speak the end, and so it is. I teach by example, not just by rule, because the soul often learns best when it sees truth in action. So let me share another example, a real story of spiritual victory. I remember the woman well, a mother, trembling but determined, desperate, not just for a solution but for a revelation. Her child had been sick for weeks. Doctors gave medicine but no answers. Friends offered sympathy but no solutions. Her own faith wavered under the weight of appearances. She sat before me, worn out, with worry, and asked, "What else can I do?" And I told her, "Stop praying from panic. Speak from power." You see, she had been careful. Too careful. She begged in soft tones, hoping not to offend heaven with too much boldness. But heaven doesn't respond to hesitation. Heaven isn't moved by well-behaved worry. Heaven is activated by authority, by command, by clarity. I told her, speak one declaration, not 10, not a paragraph, just one line, and say it like it's already done. She nodded, her hands shaking. I gave her the sentence, divine life flows through my child now, and nothing can oppose it. I told her to speak at once and let the law take over. She went home, and with every ounce of authority she had never used before, she stood by her child's bed, placed her hand upon their chest, and spoke. Divine life flows through my child now, and nothing can oppose it. That was it. No weeping, no bargaining, no theatrics, just a clear command. And within 24 hours, the fever broke. Within 3 days, full recovery. Within a week, the doctor said, we don't know what changed. But she knew. She had stopped describing the sickness and had started commanding the truth. This isn't a story of chance. This isn't a fluke. This is a real case of spiritual law in action. The spoken word did what medicine could not. The tongue became the instrument of healing, not because it was dramatic, but because it was bold. Heaven doesn't reward desperation. Heaven responds to alignment. And when your mouth becomes a mirror of divine authority, your life must change to reflect it. Say this now, as someone who has remembered their inheritance. Heaven honors bold mouths, not careful prayers. Again, heaven honors bold mouths, not careful prayers. You're not here to beg for scraps. You're here to declare the feast. And if a single declaration can rewrite the outcome of a sickbed, imagine what your consistent commands can do to your finances, your relationships, your calling. Stop waiting for confirmation. Speak is the one who confirms it. One sentence, one shift, one miracle. And so it is. Let me open the vault once more and reveal another example. Not of coincidence, not of luck, but of spoken law in motion. A man came to me, head low, pockets empty, pride worn down by months of closed doors. He said he had applied everywhere. He said he had followed every lead. He said he had prayed. Oh, how he had prayed. But I looked at him and said something that startled him. You have not spoken. He blinked. I've begged. He said, I've asked God every day. And I replied, begging isn't commanding. Asking isn't declaring. Heaven has heard your need, but your silence has blocked your supply. You see, he thought the job would come through action, effort, hustle. He believed the lie the world values, that constant busyness equals manifestation. But divine law doesn't respond to chaos. It responds to clarity. He had written resumes, not spoken results. So I gave him a phrase and told him, say this out loud, not in a whisper of doubt, but with the voice of someone who already holds the job offer in hand. The phrase was simple, direct, sacred. The perfect position is already mine. It comes swiftly under grace, in perfect timing. He stood outside under the open sky, and for the first time, he opened his mouth, not to describe the void, but to call in the reality. He said it once, twice. He repeated it as he walked. He said it like a drumbeat, until it became his rhythm. And then, just 48 hours later, he received a message from someone he hadn't spoken to in years. I thought of you this morning, they said. I heard of a role that suits you perfectly. I don't know why, but I feel you're the one. The offer came without applying, without hustling, without grinding, not because he had finally done enough, but because he had finally spoken enough. Dear one, let me tell you what I told him. There is nothing standing between you and your good but your silence. Not the economy, not timing, not competition, just silence. And silence isn't humility. Silence is self-sabotage. When you know the truth, every good and perfect gift has already been assigned to your spirit. But law requires that it be called forth. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you declare. Say it with me now, and say it like your next blessing is waiting for this moment. Nothing stands between me and my good but my silence. Again, nothing stands between me and my good but my silence. Now break it. Break the silent barrier. Speak your next chapter into motion. Say, I now command my perfect opportunity to appear. I now speak alignment into every part of my path. This isn't just a story. This isn't a suggestion. This is a strategy. The only question is, will you use your voice? Because the moment you do, your miracle moves. And so it is. There comes a moment when the soul must graduate from whisper to war cry, from hoping to announcing, from murmuring requests to commanding results. That moment is now. Your tongue is no longer timid. It is trained. Your voice is no longer a servant to your circumstances. It is the source of change. You no longer repeat what you see. You speak what must be. These words you're about to say aren't just affirmations in a soft, sentimental way. They are spiritual orders given by someone who knows they were sent here to reign, not to just react. Let your mouth now rise to match your inheritance. Say it now, not as a theory, but as an identity. I speak as one with God. Again, firmer, I speak as one with God. This isn't arrogance. This is alignment. This is knowing that your spirit is connected to the divine, and your voice carries the power of heaven. When you speak, the invisible listens. When you declare, reality obeys. Say it again, until it transforms your posture. I speak as one with God. Now affirm the divine agreement. The reason you no longer need to second guess your words: heaven backs my words with form. Say it like the clouds are waiting. Heaven backs my words with form, because the spiritual realm doesn't wait to see if you're worthy. It waits to see if you're willing. Willing to speak with clarity, willing to declare with authority, willing to break the cycle of silence and say, now, and now, the final blow to hesitation: I am not hoping, I am commanding. Once more, I am not hoping, I am commanding. Let every prayer be elevated. Let every intention be ignited. Let every spoken word carry the voltage of divine law. You're not here to test the waters. You're here to part them. You're not here to wait for change. You're here to declare it. And now you have. And so it is. Now I ask you, not softly, but with sacred purpose, will you speak as if it's done, or will you stay quiet and stuck, waiting for some cosmic permission slip that will never arrive? Divine law doesn't respond to silence, and heaven doesn't move for the passive. The truth has been given to you. The law has been laid bare. The examples, the scriptures, the declarations, the fire in your being yet, has all been handed to you, like a sword. But the sword is only as powerful as the hand that wields it. And your hand, dear listener, is your mouth. You cannot just absorb this video and expect change. You must activate it. You must declare it. You must open your mouth and let the word become reality through your own voice. No more quiet agreements with lack. No more spiritual hesitation disguised as patience. No more watching others change while you sit in shadows you were born to. Outshine. Speak. Because if you don't, everything stays the same. Not because spirit has held anything back, but because you refused to claim it. So here is your sacred task, your line in the sand, your call to action. Go to the comments right now and speak your declaration. Not a hope, a word, not a request, a command. Write, my word is my weapon, and I use it. Say it aloud as you type it. Let your soul hear you claim your power. Let heaven know you've entered the game of life as a master, not a spectator. Let every delay, every doubt, every shadow hear your voice and know you are no longer silent. And if something moved in you, if something shifted, stirred, awakened, then return to this place of declaration often. Subscribe not for entertainment, but for reinforcement. This isn't just a channel for information. This is a gathering of commanders, a temple of spoken law. And you, my friend, have just stepped into your authority. Speak, and so it is.